Where to start when jumping into comics? It can be very daunting since there are so many. Here at Thought Balloon, we are not just summarizing the comics, but also sharing our thoughts and opinions on what we have just covered. If there's any part of this that piques your interest and you don't want to be spoiled, you can pause the video and jump right into that comic. Or you may have read the comics we're covering and just want a quick refresher. Whatever the case may be, we hope you enjoy us geeking out. This marks the beginning of our coverage of the Chris Claremont run of the Uncanny X-Men. And because Claremont was the writer for so long, you can see how cohesive the story turns out to be. There are ups and downs in the story, of course, but man, is this long run iconic. I am very excited to cover it and share my thoughts as I am a huge fan of the X-Men. Quick little mention, you may know some of the X-Men lore, but that doesn't mean everyone does. Since we are starting from the beginning, I won't be covering or explaining any lore and or story bits that are not present in the current issues being covered. For example, Wolverine initially having bone claws and then metal claws was something added down the line, so I won't mention it until it comes up in the story way later. So then, let's get into it. For those who don't know, the X-Men were actually canceled in 1970 and then relaunched in 1975. The original X-Men comics are not very good, and honestly, I would recommend skipping them. But let's quickly cover the important topics. The main team. In upstate New York and Westchester County, there is a school for mutants, beings born with a genetic mutation that grants them various powers. You have Professor X, Charles Xavier, who brought together the X-Men to learn the extent of their own powers. He has telepathy. Then you have Cyclops, Scott Summers, who can shoot force beams from his eyes. He is unable to control his powers and needs special glasses to do so. Cyclops is the on-field leader of the X-Men. Next you have Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, who also has telepathic powers. She's the only girl on the team and is what all the other members are trying to get at. And she eventually ends up in a relationship with Cyclops. Next you have Iceman, Bobby Drake. He can create and control ice. Once he mastered his powers, he gained a pure ice form. Then you have Angel, Warren Worthington III. He has large bird wings and is rich, which you can tell from his name. Lastly, you have Beast, Hank McCoy, who has enhanced physical traits. He's basically like a normal person who is able to move around like a monkey or a gorilla. He eventually mutates again into a blue-furred man. The most important aspect of these original issues is that they lay the foundation for the X-Men, the very basics, and they introduce famous villains. The important ones here are Magneto and his evil Brotherhood of Mutants, popular members being Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Other villains like the Blob, the evil stepbrother of Professor X, the Juggernaut, and the Sentinels are introduced. Then, down the line, we introduce characters like Havoc, Cyclops' brother with similar powers, and Polaris, who also possesses magnetism powers. Finally, let's get into the comics. Giant-sized X-Men. The comic starts with Professor X forming a new X-Men team to save the old team. You see, the old X-Men went on a mission to a mysterious island and never returned. Ready for more quick character exposition? The first new X-Men that is introduced is Nightcrawler, Kurt Wagner, a German man who is currently being hunted down for his demonic appearance and his ability to teleport. Instead of facing bigotry due to their ethnicity, they face discrimination because of their race as mutants. Nightcrawler first introduced this concept of mutants being hated by society right away. The comic then continues with Wolverine, who we all know as the short-clawed rough guy from Canada. We learn right away that he was on a previous team that he's fed up with. This is important to remember for future comics. Another thing to mention is Wolverine's name and origin, along with his powers, are very much a slow burn and will continue to be retconned and grow as the comics continue. Next is Banshee, Sean Cassidy, an Irishman who was introduced in earlier X-Men comics. He has sonic screams that enable him to fly as well. Then there's Storm, Aurora, an African woman who is revered as a goddess for her control of the weather. Then, Sunfire, Shiro Yoshisa, a Japanese mutant who, at this point, sort of represents all of Japan as the head superhero. Next is the humble young Russian farmer Peter Rasputin, also known as Colossus. And lastly, there is the Native American Thunderbird, John Proudstar. Nightcrawler can teleport. Wolverine has heightened senses and claws. Banshee can scream. Storm can control the weather, Sunfire has fire powers. Colossus can turn his skin into an organic metal. And Thunderbird is strong and fast. They all join together in the X Mansion and are given superhero suits, which Xavier explains were made from unstable molecules by Reed Richards, otherwise known as Mr. Fantastic. At this point, Cyclops enters and explains to the new X Men what the original mission was. Cerebro is a mutant finding program slash computer that spots a new mutant on a mysterious island called Krakoa. The original X Men, minus Beast, who is busy doing his own thing, take their custom designed jet, the Blackbird, to travel to the island. Also, the first mention of Krakoa, which those of you who are familiar with newer comics know is an important arc way down the line. As soon as they land, they are knocked out. Cyclops awakens, no idea what happened or what happened to the other X-Men, and his powers are gone. He hops back on the jet and travels to the mansion, and explains to Professor X what has happened. As he does so, his power kick comes back in, and that catches up to the present situation. Sunfire, whose whole character trait is being very hot-headed, decides to leave, and the rest of the mutants join Cyclops and hop in the jet. All the characters at this point are very independent and have not yet learned how to work together or even to the extent of their own abilities. So as they are in the sky, Sunfire decides to join them again, and the team lands on the island. Cyclops splits the team up, Storm and Colossus, Banshee and Wolverine, Sunfire and Nightcrawler, and Cyclops and Thunderbird. By splitting up, they will go to different parts of the island. As each party lands on the island, they each spot a weird-looking building, and they head towards it. They then have to deal with the dangerous environment and wildlife. Each party shows off their abilities, and then it happens to be that they all reconnect at the strange-looking temple. They break open the front door and find the original X-Men wrapped in what looks like vines. The new X-Men quickly free the original members, and this is where Angel explains that this is a trap. The mutant on the island wanted them to come and save them, and in fact, the mutant is the island itself. The mutant Krakoa starts to take the form of a large monster and floods the minds of the X-Men with images of its creation. The original area dealt with atomic testing, which led to the organisms there being linked together to create a colony intelligence. It fed on the X-Men and then continued to hunger, which brought the new X-Men here so it could finally consume the entire team. Krakoa explains all of this, and the whole X-Men team fights off the monster. The X-Men struggle to take down the monster, but eventually Professor X has a battle psychically with the creature, all the way back from the mansion. But even though Professor X is a powerful mind, he fails at fighting the creature. This leads to Polaris using her power of magnetism to pull the island down and then launch it back out into space to destroy it. She does so, which is an insane feat, and the X-Men now have to escape before being sucked down into the vortex left in the island's wake. Iceman creates an iceberg raft, and Cyclops and Havoc use their powers to push the group away. The vortex left in the island's wake is causing a big problem, and Iceman eventually covers the team. Once the ocean settles, the jet pops out of the water, and the X-Men hop on board and fly away. And this is where the giant-sized X-Men issue ends. As the whole X-Men team returns to the mansion, Professor X asks the new members who wants to stay as an X-Men. Sunfire right away is like, peace. My duty is to Japan, and I don't really care about any of you anyways. And then he dips. The rest of the new X-Men are like, well, we weren't up to much beforehand, so let's just see how things play out. Then, the original members all decide that they are done being X-Men. Professor X is shocked, and the original members explain that they feel like they need to move on and find who they are beyond being X-Men. Wolverine makes fun of the members and explains that they should just quit making a scene and just leave. Wolverine was just always the cool bad boy, and it's easy to understand why he became so popular. Cyclops is the only original member to stay, and he has a heartfelt goodbye to his girlfriend Jean Grey and his brother Havoc. Cyclops is the leader of the X-Men, and he feels it's his duty to protect and represent mutants. As soon as the old X-Men leave, Cyclops explains that, man, these new guys are strong, sure, but I need to make them work together as a team. He sends them into the Danger Room, which is an advanced training room that can simulate any situation. Then we cut to a government facility hidden in a mountain called Valhalla. The facility is described as a powerhouse for American forces. When a worker inside the facility opens up a package and decides to just press the button on this device that he knows nothing about, a portal opens and in comes the animal human hybrids called the Animen. They wipe out all the workers inside and allow for the mastermind behind the attack, Count Nefaria, to come in and clear out the whole base, claiming it as their own. The Count demands that each nation pay them, or else it will use the base's nuclear weapons to destroy everything. Beast, who now works with the Avengers, asks Professor X if the X-Men can deal with this. The X-Men agree and fly to the base. The US military radio in the Black Jet is like, nice, the Avengers are here to stop the Count. Then Cyclops is like, well, it's the X-Men. And the military is like, crap, the X-Men are handling this. And as the X-Men approach the base, they are hit by missiles and ejected from the ship. The X-Men land and then infiltrate the base. They fight the Animen and win, and the Count bails, but he has set the base in self-destruct mode. Thunderbird chases the Count. Meanwhile, everyone else tries to stop the base from exploding. The Count flies away in a jet with Thunderbird holding onto the plane. Professor X psychically projects his way there and explains to Cyclops that you don't have to deal with the self-destruction sequence because he mentally checked everything and it won't blow up. Professor X then checks on Thunderbird and tells him to get off the jet before something bad happens. Thunderbird ignores him and tries to destroy the plane, but it blows up midair, killing both the Count and Thunderbird. The next issue begins with the mutants back at the mansion after their mission. Cyclops is going over the events of the last issue and he's angry. He's mad that Thunderbird died. And he's mad that as a team leader, he feels responsible. In a fit of rage, he blasts through nearby trees and accidentally destroys what looks to be a stone pillar. This is really the start of Cyclops becoming the main character. Yes, this is a comic following a team, and the next issues will cover individuals in the team as a whole, but Cyclops as team leader really takes the focus. Then cut to the rest of the X-Men training in the Danger Room. The characters are starting to form personalities now. Wolverine is wild and dangerous, Nightcrawler is the class clown of the group, and Colossus is the big friendly giant. Banshee is talking to Xavier, meanwhile, and Xavier shares his thoughts about Cyclops struggling with the death of Thunderbird, which is a bit odd since Cyclops seems like the only one to really care at all. Their conversation ends when Xavier says the mansion has a new member, a housemaid, who is supposed to be joining them right now, and Banshee's going to make introductions. He's expecting an old lady, but then opens the door to Moira McTaggart, someone he finds very attractive. Cut again to a military base where Colonel Ross is here to cut the funding project this man named Dr. Lang is obsessed with. Dr. Lang explains that the project, Armageddon, will bring an end to mutants, and that he is keeping the legacy of Bulver Trask, a previous villain of the X-Men, alive. Ross leaves and Lang explains that the project will only be cut if Ross makes it to Washington alive. For now, back to the X-Men. As the group is talking, they are interrupted by Cyclops being thrown into the room. You see the weird stone pillar Cyclops destroyed earlier, which really just awoke a demon, Kieric. The whole team tries to fight the demon, but as each time they think they defeat the demon, it regenerates and seemingly drains those around it. Professor X tries to mind probe the demon, but the demon's thoughts are so alien to him that he is shocked by it, and the demon continues to fight. Eventually, it leads outside, where Storm follows it to the stone pillar. Storm recognizes this as a carrion, and is trying to drag her into it. Storm relives some of memories of her youth and zaps the carrion with a lightning bolt, seemingly destroying it. Lastly, the comic finishes with the plane crash of Colonel Ross. It seems that Dr. Lane's project will continue.
Hey everyone, I'm Nate.
And I'm Aiden. So, I have a question for you right off the bat.
Yeah, go ahead.
So why does Cyclops lose his powers when he crash lands on Krakoa?
He loses his powers because Krakoa just kind of like turns them off for a sec.
Is that ever explained how? Why doesn't he use that power later on?
It was just who knows. I think it was just more like a telepathic like block, if anything. Yeah, he could have easily done it again during the fight, and Krakoa would have won, but the Uncanny X-Men would have been there.
Yeah, I just thought it was odd that he like flies all the way back to Professor X too,
Yeah.
and then the powers come back on, and then he flies back to Krakoa then?
Yeah, he flies from Cocoa all the way back to the mansion. I think it's more explained that because Cocoa wanted more things to feed on, he allowed Cyclops that chance to like leave with without his powers. You
Oh,
know what I
okay.
mean? But
Yeah, I just thought that part was
yeah,
strange.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff where it's like plot armor, but I think that was just more
Yeah.
of like a the scheme of Cocoa.
No, go you continue.
I was just gonna say like, what do you think about this? Because like I mean, I'm sure you've read other comics during the time, but I feel like this one's like just so. I feel like Claremont coming on as a like already a fan of the X-Men, it's already being written differently. You know what I mean? It's like it's not that first generation of comics, Marvel comics, because those were written by like the original creators like Stan Lee. This is more like
Yeah.
the person who like read those and comes on with a different type of experience and point of view. But did you notice some of that stuff? How it's just it is just it flows. All the characters are actual characters. The dialogue's a little bit better. You notice some of that stuff?
Yeah, it reminds me of the this seems to be like the era for Marvel where they try to switch writing tactics
Yeah.
because it reminds me of when Peter David took over the Hulk
Hmm.
around the same time as this being made. And the writing and the dialogue is much more realistic, I would say, and still leans into like the comic booky style of like superheroism and the way they talk to each other, which has always been kind of like a meme. But here I think it works because it's like I don't know, the stakes feel a bit uh higher, I guess I would say.
Yeah. And I think, man, it just like it blows up after this. You know what I mean? Like it clearly works because like as we just discussed, the X-Men get canceled and then it gets revived into the Uncanny X-Men, and it's been on ever since. It becomes the most popular comic ever. Not this one, a different
Yeah.
X-Men comic, but it's just like I feel like that new introduction, and also just getting rid of that original team. They suck. I'm sorry, but they're boring. It isn't until
Who
like
was on the original team?
like Marvel Girl, Beast, Iceman, and Angel, and then down the line, Havoc and Polaris get added. But a lot of those characters don't become interesting until way later, where something drastic happens. Like Angel, in my opinion, Angel is so boring, but when he becomes Archangel, he becomes so much more interesting. Um, but same with like I don't know, like Iceman. I feel like Iceman is just so like he's not used for like until the 80s again, really. Like he shows up every now and then, but it is until like the mid 80s where he becomes decent, in my opinion. Um, Marvel
I like
Girl,
his powers though. I
yeah, his
love
powers are great.
Frozone
Yeah,
too from Incredibles, and like I've always been I always love ice powers
yeah,
in comics and
me too.
stuff.
Yeah, but it's just like Nightcrawler is a better version of Iceman. Iceman is always like the part of the comedic relief in the original run, and
Yeah.
it just came off as that like, "Eh, I'm Iceman, eh?" Like, it comes off like that because that's how it was written, like, back then, like, where, uh, I don't know, I just feel like once Claremont came in, he actually had an idea how to write humor, um,
Yeah, it's like they wanted to have a Human Torch type.
yeah, and it just didn't
Like,
really translate well, which is weird because Stanley also wrote Human Torch. But, um, yeah, and then obviously, I think everyone knows that like Jean Grey eventually turns into Phoenix, and
mhm,
uh, but she's reintroduced later, but she's also pretty boring. Like when she doesn't have that Phoenix identity. Um, Cyclops has
yeah.
always been great, and that's partially the reason he's there still. Um, he's kind of like yeah, his nickname is also like the, Boy Scout. Just because
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, like he's always been being called a Boy Scout just because he's so on like he just so much like he just believes in Professor X in his dream that he
Mhm.
will, he will stick to that code.
Yeah, I think they do a good job of having him be like the Boy Scout, but to a point where, like with Superman, I feel like you can agree with a lot of the decisions that he makes, but with Cyclops, sometimes you feel like he needs to like stretch beyond his like uh desire to think or what I'm trying to say is like Cyclops restricts himself sometimes.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah,
Like
no, yeah.
he sometimes doesn't make the right decision.
And that becomes super like evident down the line too. Um but it's really cool that you mentioned that because if you pay attention during the next issues and the next videos that we're making, that is the case. There's many points where he's like, "Is this right? What I'm doing?" But he still
Yeah.
continues to do it. And
It's
that's
like
just
what is your morals
yeah,
really?
like his identity as a mutant first and a student of Xavier gets in the way of a few things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
yeah, and then way down the line too, like more recent comics, if anybody's familiar. If you're familiar too with another Cocoa, the most recent Cocoa thing, I'll just talk about that a little bit because I haven't fully read that, and that's not really in this video. Um, but like when they bring back Cocoa and they have like a mutant nation, uh,
Mhm.
he goes full. Cyclops goes full like like how do I explain it? His character a lot of people would say it's like kind of character assassination because he becomes so like uh, man what's like I want to say like dictator esque because I mean the mutants kind of become that because they just become like huge powerhouse, but it is like where you're saying where like he is a boy scout to like for the whole nation. He's like the first one to like step in and
Oh shit.
explain the politics to the other heroes and like explain that like no we're here as mutants first. But it's
Yeah.
really cool to see that like that you could see that like foundation of that part of the character from this beginning, and then we see it throughout in upcoming issues, all the way to modern day too. Like they're still working on different aspects of the character, and it still works. But yeah, another thing that I don't know. I feel like this is the main reason I actually got into these older comics was the art. I feel like the art is
Yeah.
actually really good, especially for the time. I hate old school like comic book art. I think it's so boring to look at. And but you know, I sorry, but I don't know who the artists tied to these comics are, but not only is the art really good, but the layout and the panels are amazing. Um, Way down the line, the transition to like panel to panel is just really good. And then, yeah, I just feel like I don't know. Have you read a lot of older comics where it's just like that gets in the way or no?
I've read a lot of older comics. I'll say that a lot of artwork was really good, but then a lot of the coloring
Yeah.
kind of makes the artwork look worse because they had to cut corners.
Hmm.
So a lot of like especially with Jack, I think it's Jack Kirby, he would have these like really detailed backgrounds, especially during space scenes. He would like draw out the entire constant like entire night sky with all the stars, and then the colorist would come in and just completely block the whole thing out with like a solid
Yeah.
color and just make it look really flat and boring. So I think that a lot of older penciling is really good.
Yeah.
And I think that in these issues specifically, it's like the coloring doesn't hold back the pencils anymore, or at least from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Especially when Krakoa reveals himself, like that was
Yeah. That
I
part
love
is.
that panel where he's like coming out of the earth. It's all like falling off of his shoulders and his legs are still like molded to the ground.
Yeah, and then we also have to understand that, like, the one that like, the images we had during the video are the touched up, remake digital versions, so it is a lot brighter, but I feel like back then too, I don't know, with the colors, yeah, you kinda have to understand that it's, like, not a physical copy, so of course it kinda looks weird, but,
Right.
um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I tried reading other comics during this time because there's a few, tie-ins to other, like, just it would be like, "Hey, if you wanna figure out what's happening, go read Avengers during this time." And I would, like, I'd be like, "Oh, let me go check that out." And it's just I don't know, I feel like those the competition wasn't that good. Or
Yeah.
the X-Men are just so good, like, because the writing was there, but then the art was also there, and I just did not like some of the other, like, layout, paneling, and then the artwork itself. But this one just I don't know, it holds up so well. It looks great. It only gets better as time goes on, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I thought the art was just that's what I didn't like. I wanted to start the X-Men from the beginning, and I was a little worried because of that. But even like if you were to compare this one to the first 60 issues, you could just see the difference of how great the art is, and I feel like that is very much a driving force, another driving force of why the X-Men did so well in this revival.
Yeah. I think that they needed to bring it because I am sure that this is around the time Marvel is starting to see some sales drops because I think this is all what led to them selling their company
Yeah, the
in
character
like the
rights,
90s.
like the
Yeah.
studio rights, yeah, which is crazy. It's so weird to think about. Like, yeah, I talked about it not too long ago with like a friend, and I was explaining how. Wait, was it with you? How? No, no, it wasn't with you.
Maybe.
Um, but I was just explaining how when the studio rights sold, how some of like very famous comic book characters, their movie rights, nothing was used, and so then they became less known, and then other characters became more popular. I think the most prominent thing is just like Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider was really famous, and then now it's just more like the MCU, whoever's on the MCU. But
Mhm.
the X Men was picked up because their property was always great. But it is weird to see how the other ones. Uh, we're getting we're getting distracted,
Getting a
but
little off topic.
yeah, but cool little topic that
So
I don't know. Maybe we could
it all
discuss about a
circles
different
back.
thing. 'Cause-
Everything kind of ties together. So that's why we get off topic so
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, it's like the reason why they became so popular is because because then also I think this is also really important to understand with the studio rights. The X-Men TV show um, that came out in the '90s is based off of the Claremont run, and that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why the X-Men are so famous too, because it also got all the people who weren't reading comics, and now it just adds to another reason why the X-Men are so popular.
Yeah. And I love that show.
Yeah, the show's great.
That show really that's why this stuff feels like so natural as like
Yeah.
an X-Men origin, even though it's not how they originally started. This kind of
Hmm.
feels like the beginning to me, just because this is what I've always understood. I think the movies kind of go off of this run too.
Yeah, definitely. Just because I mean, a lot of you'll see in the next upcoming videos too. They're just so iconic. Like they're just so tied to the characters and the team that it's like
Hmm.
how do you not base it off of this? Um, but yeah, the shows are great.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep going,
The
keep
shows
reading.
actually, I was rewatching some of the older episodes because I didn't grow up with that. Um, but I remember reading or watching a couple of the older animated show episodes, and some of the episodes are actually like pretty close, like one to one. Um, and I thought that was pretty cool. Obviously, it can't
It'd be
be like
foolish to not use all the stuff that they've been given from
yeah,
Claremont.
hmm they can't. But there's times where like they can't. perfectly translate it one to one because that was a kid's cartoon. Um,
Right.
but it is really cool. Like if you don't want to watch these videos, go watch that show instead, and you pretty much get a run. You get a summary version of the Claremont run.
Yeah. You don't have to watch our video. Just go watch the show
Yeah,
instead.
go watch another go watch the famous show.